in order for me to heal through this painful moment, it's okay to set boundaries in place. And that's what kind of ties into today's topic, which is like the reason why I've decided to like break up with my parents and advocate for myself so I can create that space so that I can heal through some of my childhood trauma and then be able to come back and get the relationship that I want with my parents because I was able to heal some of those past woundings and move forward with my life.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today I have on the show Christen Yuan, and Christen is a master life coach certified by the ELEMENTUM Coaching Institute. She is the host of The Modern Day Asians, which is a podcast that she talks about the challenges she faces as an Asian American and offers coaching on how to start overcoming those struggles. And really her passion comes from her desire to help millennial Asians heal from their cultural pain and help them find their fullest expression and self-acceptance and belonging. And that's really what we talk about today. And whether you're an Asian American or not listening to this, I think this conversation applies to everybody because we're talking about breaking up with your parents. And as harsh and divisive as that sounds, it really is a conversation worth exploring because it's not this definitive thing like, oh, I'm going to break up with my parents and never talk to them again, which Christen is going to talk to us about. But it's really exploring common causes of this, like obligation, emotional abuse, whether it's control or just differing values and beliefs. But it's this process that she helps walk her clients through and what she talks to us about today, where it's this process of really coming into your own and really understanding who you are as a person and your own personal values and beliefs that may be separate from your parents and from your family, and what that looks like and what it looks like to kind of mend the relationship from that new place of self-acceptance and belonging within yourself, and what the relationship with your parents looks like moving forward. Because again, it's not about cutting ties and never talking to them again. So I love this conversation. Christen brings so much wisdom just coming from her Asian American background and what that looks like for her. But I think so much of us who, even if we're not Asian American, can resonate with this conversation. So let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Christen, and I'm excited to bring a whole new topic and conversation to y'all today. And I'm excited for Christen to share her story and her expertise in this. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Hope, for having me on.
Yes. Okay. So I feel like to start the conversation, I feel like it has to start with your story to kind of give the backstory of this area that we're going to talk about with, parenting and all of those things. So can you just share kind of your journey, your story, and how you got here and why you do what you do as a life coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about me is my parents were immigrants from Asia and China in particular. And so growing up, I've always felt like really split in between two cultures, and that's Eastern and Western cultures. And for you listeners out there, I'm sure as you heard of psychologists and all these experts, there's a lot of different like ways of thinking. The mentality is just different. And it was like at home, I was just raised by like really strict Eastern values. It was so focused on like collectivism, family. You're not viewed as an individual.
Right.
And then in American culture, the Western culture is very about individualism, doing what's right for you, like chase your dreams, do what you like to do. And I felt like really confused. It actually caused a lot of conflict. Like as I was trying to find my identity, it was just so difficult to occupy what I call is the third space. Yeah. So it's like being raised in a certain household with different values and beliefs, but you're in a country and you're trying to figure out a way to navigate and make things that make sense for me. So for me, I'm an Asian female. So not only do I carry responsibility in terms of like who I need to be as the eldest daughter, but also have these women stereotypes that I need to follow, and then adding on top of my parents' expectations, which is like very performance based.
Mhm.
It's showing respect to elders, pleasing them, making decisions and account for the family as a whole.
Mhm.
It was just very messy.
Right.
So that's why I am focused on coaching individuals in that third space who might have had like immigrant parents, or am trying to figure out or how to adapt into the country that they're living in, and because there's a lot of cultural trauma too as well that's
Right.
involved with a lot of like childhood things. So that's why it brings me here today to just like talk about like what are these intergenerational childhood traumas, and how does that affect us in the way that we live our lives
Right.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I imagine that, and I mean, I can only imagine the struggle that was for you because, and I would love for you to speak on how you manage the piece around like wanting to be an individual, right? But then also because I'm sure your culture is still, you still hold your culture dear, not like you wanted to hate your culture, right? Like you know, it's a part of you and it will always be a part of you. But like, how do you balance that piece where it's like, okay, well, I want to like respect my culture and I still honor it, but I also want to be myself and not feel guilty. Like, you know, like I'm sure there's a lot of guilt and shame kind of tied around that. How was that managing those pieces?
Yeah, and that's a really great question because it's still a working process, even
Sure.
just for me. And I've
Hmm.
done a lot of work, like inner child work. I've have coaches and also seek therapists to try to work through some of those traumas, but it is difficult to decide, what you want to continue on and what doesn't serve you
Right.
anymore.
Right.
And I think it's reevaluating, starting with the moments that and of the awareness of, oh, okay, well, this moment triggered something of my past, and you work through
Hmm.
those certain moments and you start to figure out like, okay, in order for me to heal through this painful moment, it's okay to set boundaries in place. And that's what kind of ties into today's topic, which is like the reason why I've decided to like break up with my parents and advocate for myself so I can create that space so that I can heal through some of my childhood trauma
Yeah.
and then be able to come back and get the relationship that I want with my parents, because I was able to heal some of those past woundings
Hmm.
and move forward with my life.
Hmm. So when you say, can you talk a little bit about that breaking up piece? Because I'm sure some people listening are thinking like, well, this sounds really dramatic, right? Like breaking up with your, like that's a pretty strong way to say that. So can you explain what that means with you, the quote, break up with your family, with your parents, what that means and what that looked like for you?
Yeah. So for me, I realized that there were certain topics that I couldn't talk to my parents about.
Hmm.
And it was, for me, one thing that like kind of bothered me and was triggering for me was the fact that they wanted answers to everything, like what I wanted to do with my life, the
Hmm.
pressures of settling down, having a family, and knowing how much money that I made with what's going on in my career. And I needed the space to really, I moved away from them. Actually, the other opposite side of the state, I think I moved, or maybe I moved 9 hours away from them so that they wouldn't micromanage me.
Sure.
Well, it's hard for them to understand what boundaries even is,
Right.
because there was no such thing
Right.
as boundaries in the Asian household.
Hmm.
It was like, you were in a bedroom or something and the door was closed, your parents won't knock, they would just walk right in and see what you're doing, or there's no such
No
thing as
privacy. Yep.
privacy. Like privacy just didn't exist in the vocabulary. There was no
Yeah.
such thing.
Yeah.
So growing up from like that kind of environment to transitioning, being out of the household, I was like so excited to just I couldn't wait to start my life and not have to explain myself and my
Hmm.
decisions, because I
Hmm.
think part of that was a big factor too. Like I would tell my parents, you know, what my decision would be, and they would just like question me or doubt me, and that just doesn't help me with my self-confidence, or allow me the room to make mistakes, to grow from my mistakes. And so what breaking up with my parents really looked like was withholding some of that information from sharing with them, especially if I'm going through something tough like grief or break up with a boyfriend or something like that. I had to withhold that information until I felt really confident of sharing that with them, because their pattern was to question me or making sure, you know, that I was making the right decision. So two pieces. Yes, it was distance, and two, it was the frequency of communication.
Yeah. So were you still communicating with them at the time? Like you still talked to them? It was just kind of limiting the conversation to like only certain points. Is that how it? Yeah.
I wouldn't tell them details about anything. I think I was very cautious about what I shared, and it was only until I felt like really confident that I worked my emotions and feelings through a particular thing I wanted to share with them, then I would share it with them.
Yeah. So did they know, were they aware you were kind of going through this internal process? Or did they know that this is what you were doing? Were they aware of everything?
I think my parents had an idea of, I've had this type of independency like trait when I was very young. And it's because I'm the eldest and I challenged them a lot. And my behavior as the eldest daughter was always been like, but why not this? But how about this?
Right.
And if they didn't agree, my habit was just to find a way to make it work regardless, and like not need them for anything.
Right.
And a funny thing too as well is my stepdad was telling me that when I was in the household, he could tell that I was going to be one of the kids to move the furthest away by the way that I held my chopsticks.
By the way you held. Oh wow, that's hilarious.
So like, that's just a joke, because like I don't know how accurate that was, but like when I was really little, like I held my chopsticks like really far away from.
I see the distance. Yeah.
So I think they're not, you know, they're obviously like, they have a clue. They knew that that I would be the one to really like move the furthest away and challenge myself and not be stuck with comfort. So I think they've always had an idea that yes, I will be far away. And I think with time and what I've been able to demonstrate to them, starting my life on my own, and that they finally trust in the fact that yes, I can make my own decisions, and it proved to them like, okay, she's fine.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. How is your relationship now? Like, have you like healed things? Do you have like a functional relationship? Do they understand you on a different level now?
Yeah, so there's a couple of combinations, and I did an episode on my podcast about like my journey, and that episode title is How I Reconnected with My Mother as a Wounded Daughter.
Nice.
And what the process looked like was there was a couple of things that I tried. I realized the way when I talked to my mom, we were talking to each other in the same kind of like the need to be validated or recognized for the hard work or the efforts into a relationship. Right. So both of us were kind of like bringing this energy that was like, okay, well, I do this for you. Like, how come you can't show me your appreciation?
Right.
And I was coming from that place too, as well.
Yeah.
So I had to really like change and understand my mom's love language. And that is words of affirmation, which is non-existent in Asian households.
Yeah.
That is just not a thing. And her other love language was like gifts and touch, right? So obviously because of the distance, I can't do the other two. I could do gifts. But, you know, at words of affirmations, I decided to challenge myself. So what I did was every once in a while, I'll shoot her a text that's just out of the blue, and I would tell her, in our native language, like how much I appreciated her, or if I did something that made me think of her, like her cooking.
Yeah.
That is the way we bonded, is through
Yeah.
cooking. And I would share that with her. And the first time I did that, she was like so she felt so warm in her heart. She like
Yeah.
teared up a little bit, and she showed
Oh,
my stepdad, because it was just like so out of the blue.
right.
Those are like little tiny things you can do. It's just like asking your parents, what their love language is.
Yeah.
And that's because, I mean, I did a lot of work to even come to that place, to just be like, oh, well, let me try and change up my communication style a little bit. It was after taking a look at my experience and giving her like the benefit of the doubt that she raised us the best that she could with the
Right.
information that she had.
Yeah.
And the biggest differentiator and reminder that I had was, back when she grew up, it was like communist China.
Right.
Everything was rationed. Like you only get a certain amount of like protein, certain amount of eggs, like everything was very heavily rationed. But she always made sure growing up for us that there was always food available, whether that's if she's not home, is in a Tupperware. She meal prepped for us. If we came home and it was like 3 o'clock and we're hungry, we could just heat something up in the microwave and we would have hot meals ready to go. So she always made sure that we were fed. And that was the way she showed us love.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I think sometimes when people hear that word like breakup, they think it's like they're totally breaking up, as in like, let's just like rip the relationship in two and never talk again. But I think it's so powerful that you can, quote, break up with your parents to work on yourself and like your journey, but then come back together with like this version of you that's like, okay, this is me, and allow them to accept this version of you, and you be able to, learn how to communicate from that place. Like that's a huge thing. And to be able to, and from it to be on both sides too. I mean, I'm sure that was probably a stretch for your mom too, to kind of like have to reconfigure how she's communicating with you and like how to show her love language and stuff. I'm sure that was a challenge for her too.
Yeah, I think it's like when we take a look at just boundaries in general, it's a good practice to go back and review the boundaries that you've set, because those boundaries shouldn't be like forever set in stone.
Right.
Because what happens is like you're blocking yourself, you're trying to control the situation by saying, okay, I'm going to put a boundary on my parents and never talk to them again. And that is a control that's coming from a place where there's fear involved, fear of pain.
Right.
And you don't want to operate like that, because you're cutting off sources of love, the opportunity to go deeper into a relationship.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose of having or setting boundaries.
Right.
The purpose of having those boundaries is in place, is creating that space that you need so that you can do what you can do to that's under your control, and that's yourself, not how people talk to you or respond to you. The only way that you can control from that situation is how you react.
Right.
If you work and focus on how you react to these triggering moments, and you work through those triggering moments, and you give yourself the space to process that, to heal that, it won't even bother you anymore. Like that's what I realized too, is like I was so short with my mom when I didn't give the opportunity for healing. It was just like, if she would just make a comment or just
you'd be triggered.
I was just like automatically
yeah, exactly.
Like, my temper was just so short with her.
Yeah.
And with doing that work, that inner child healing work, it doesn't really bother me that much anymore.
Yeah.
And that is an example of having that boundary and doing what you need to do on your end, not try to control what your mom does or doesn't say. She does have, she has the opportunity to change her communication style, but that's not set for everybody. Some people won't
Yeah.
change. They'll
Yeah.
still act the same way.
Right. That's true.
But you're building that tolerance.
Right.
Like this stuff that you're doing on your own, you're building that tolerance so that you can hold a bigger space
Right.
for all of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I think that's a huge piece to point out is that your situation isn't everybody's situation, because your mom was like kind of receptive to you and kind of this new way of how you interact with each other and this kind of new chapter of your relationship. But I'm sure it doesn't happen like that for everybody. And I think that's the big piece is like going into it with the understanding that like you're not doing it to make the other person change. I mean, I think that's with any relationship, right? It's not just about your parents. It's not just about your parents, but like the journey, because like when you were saying, if you have a bad relationship, you just, you could just like leave and be like, oh, I'm not talking to my parents ever again. Like, but I think it's similar to like what I do in my space as a functional practitioner, where it's like putting a Band-Aid on it. And it's not really getting to the root cause, right? Because the root cause is like you have personal growth and healing that you need to do. And then you're giving them space to do whatever it is, whether they do something or not, right? It's not about doing it so that they'll change. It's doing it for you.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And because everything, we can always be in a perspective where it's like, oh, I wish this other person like didn't talk to me this way, or you want to like control how they respond. But this whole mindset of this fear of wanting to control other people comes from a place of fear, and it ties even deeper back into your past. Like, why do you want to check the person you're in a relationship and test to see if they're good, if they're good? That usually is a sign that you came from a unpredictable household, and you're always just like checking people's temperatures, like how are they feeling, like are you
for your own sense of safety, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Just checking, hey, are you good, like and that can be called different things. That could be called people pleasing. That could be called perfectionist tendencies.
Totally.
Where you want your environment to be exactly what you think in your mind to create that sense of security. But that's not achievable. It's not attainable. And it leads to disappointment. You're like stressing yourself out so much that you're not even being in the moment. It just kind of takes the joy out of life when you're like so tied to your sense of security based on how other people respond to you.
Totally. I think that plays such a part in even like romantic relationships. I don't know. Do you know who Dr. Wayne Dyer is? I don't know if you ever listen to Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
He, one of his books, it was the 10, he has so many books and I've read all of them. It was the 10 something, but he has a whole chapter in there about this, where it's like, talking about relationships. And when people go into it, where it's, because a lot of people do that, right? They go into it like, well, I'm going to change these parts of him. Like, I like most of him or her, whatever, but I can go into it and I'll just change these other parts, expecting that either you're going to do the changing, or like you're saying, where it's you try to do all the things to control but it's like, that's not your job. That's what Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about. Like your job on this planet is not to change anybody else, because you're only responsible for you. I think it goes back to you and just you healing yourself and kind of reestablishing a relationship with your mom and stuff. It's you're not responsible for anybody else, and you literally can't change anybody else. Like, it's just, that's not what we're here to do. And I think, it leads to, like you're saying, disappointment and resentment, because now you resent them because they're not who you want them to be, when you can't just let them be them. And it just creates a whole world of problems. And I feel like that's the source of a lot of like strife and pain and dysfunction in so many marriages and just relationships, and parent relationships too, is it's one party or the other is going and thinking they're going to change the other person, or thinking the other person needs to change or whatever. And it's just not how it works.
I think one of the biggest like lessons around love that I had to learn is like learning to love people at where they're at.
That's exactly it.
And it's like, you do all this work and, your listeners, they're very enlightened. They know a lot more than just the common general people because of the content that you share.
Mm.
And sometimes that could be a lonely journey because you're able to see things, you're aware of things that other people cannot see.
Totally.
And in that certain stance, there has to be, that kind of space for the other person to try to get there too. You can't force them to get there because they have to go there in their own journey.
Right.
But if that's, bothering you and your relationship and that person isn't meeting you where you want them to be, then, that's where you reevaluate, like, okay, do I want to continue to have this person in my life? Am I setting certain boundaries in place? Is this person like sucking the positive energy out of me where I can't continue to do work on myself and become the best version that I want to be? So those are questions you want to ask yourself, and try to figure out certain time limits, certain restrictions on is if that is in the way of you becoming your best version of yourself. So sometimes it is a lonely journey, but eventually when you clear some of that stuff up on your own, you will have the space for the people that you do want in your life. For me, it took 10 years.
Wow. What a journey.
It took me 10 years to like, get my ducks in a row. And, there's no telling. I can't tell people, okay, generally you can wait 3 to 2 years or whatnot. It just depends on, it depends on you. You have to listen to what your body is capable of. And it depends on what season you're in too. Sometimes you're in a season where you welcome interaction. You want to be around community and people. And sometimes you just want to be alone. You need that time to yourself so that you can think. You need peace and quiet. So all those come into place.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's an important piece to mention too, because I think a lot of times people starting out on this journey to, whether it's, a spiritually enlightened journey, or whether it's this journey like you, where you were kind of coming into your own and kind of figuring out what that looks like your own personal journey. And people, because they don't tell you this, right? They don't tell you like, hey, you might lose friends along the way. Like you might lose families along the way. Like it's going to be lonely. People don't understand what's happening. Right. And I think it's such an important thing to point out that you pointed out that it can be lonely. And you might lose. Who was I listening to the other day? There's this gal that I've done some programs with. She was talking about this on Instagram, how she's like, I'd never experienced like a quote unquote breakup with a friend before, like a girlfriend. And it was one of those things where, they were kind of going two different directions in their personal journeys. And, she's very enlightened and she's very spiritual, all this. And it just, she kind of told that story, but that was kind of her point too, is it's like, you don't think about those pieces, but you also have to, I think that's a piece you have to own those pieces too, because if you and, a friend or family member, whatever, going two different directions, like holding you or the other person back is not helpful for either one of you. So I think like being okay with it, not that it's going to be easier, people aren't going to get hurt in the process, but I think it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things you have to come to terms with, that you are responsible for your journey and they're responsible for their journey. And either one of you trying to hold the other back just isn't serving you or their journey, right? Like it's just, yeah.
I had to actually talk to my sister about something like that because I think especially if you grew up in a environment where you always felt like an outsider or like it's hard for you to obtain friends, people tend to like attach themselves to these friends with the fear of, I'm going to be lonely. I don't want to do these activities alone and, this and this. But, and so they continue to have these toxic people in their life that are not serving them or making them revert to ways that they don't want to be, like gossip, drama, that type of space.
Right.
And I think it is the biggest sign that you can show yourself that self-love is just to choose yourself. Choose
Yeah.
yourself, because your highest version is above all the gossip. It's above this false sense of having friends. And when you choose yourself every single time, it won't disappoint, because once you learn to show up for yourself, that 2.0 version of yourself, in the long term, you're going to get a lot more out of life and a lot more wisdom out of life, because you are putting yourself out of the comfort zone, the stuff that you're not familiar with, environments that you're not familiar with. I recently just started to join new groups. And yeah, it is a little daunting to show up in a group and not know anyone, but it's also great to meet new friends and be and relative to what you're interested in.
Yeah, right.
Right.
You've got shared interests. Yeah.
You're bonding over shared interest.
Right.
And that is why, as you continue to build relationships, because relationships are so important. Like, as humans, we are put on this earth so that we can bond with other human beings.
Totally.
Don't matter, what anyone says. It's like, I'm a lone wolf, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But genetically, we are here.
Right.
We're community people.
Right. We're not meant to be lone wolves.
Yes. And finding that creative way, whether that's virtual, like me and you talking, or being in a group on, virtually, or just being out in person in different groups, different events, that's going to help you expand yourself past and meeting different enlightened people.
Right.
So that that could help fill that gap of this fear of being alone, and being stuck around those toxic people that don't serve you anymore.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough one. That was always a tough one for me. And it's still something I have to I don't know, it's still something I have to work on, because I've always been super independent, but it's sometimes you can get to that point where it's hyper independence, where it's okay, now you're just being it's not, the hyper independence doesn't serve you, right? Because I agree with you. We're all here to be we're like a puzzle, right? Everybody has a part in the puzzle, and we all have to stay connected in order for our piece of the puzzle to fit just right. I think that's how they all work together. And, in my businesses, I've had, periods where I'm no, I'm just going to do it all myself, and I don't need anybody, and nobody's going to do it as good as me, and I'm going to do it. But and then all that does is, well, first of all, it causes your whole body to break down, because you're stressed out to the max. But you realize that, well, first of all, successful people never do it on their own. They hire other successful people to do things for them. Yeah. But two, I just think that's the way humanity is supposed to be. We all work together so we can all share our gifts. Because that's the other piece. When you find someone to help you on your journey, they're also able to share their gift that they're helping you with. So you're empowering the other person as well at the same time.
Yes. And that is the beauty of stepping out of your comfort zone, so you can experience different gifts that other people have.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as painful as it is, sometimes, you got to let go of those friendships or say goodbye to those, or put a pause on that, because sometimes people aren't meant to be in our lives forever.
Right.
And I think that's just conditioning and training, where it's okay, we want this, Disney love. It's just this high of happiness and everything in overdrive, that you're just going to be happy forever and ever.
Best friends forever.
Yeah. And never experience anything negative. And that's just not normal. You're going to have ups and downs in relationships. And ultimately, it's up to the person to decide whether or not it's worth a relationship, that you want to continue in your life.
Right.
And again, people are here for seasons. It's almost like dating, when you go on dates with people, some people are yeah, okay, I'm happy for your presence, that you spent some time with me for this hour and a half, that you had dinner with me. And then some people are okay, yeah, we dated for 3 months, but in the 3 months, I've learned this, and this about myself. but we're not compatible. So let's move on.
Yeah.
And that could work with friendships too. Like
For
that's
sure.
the mentality you should have with friendships as well. It's just like, okay, yeah, we hung out, but something, happened, and that doesn't like support like who I want to be in the future. So maybe it's time to let go and move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. For sure. For sure. So for those who are listening and they're resonating with this and kind of your story and how you did kind of, the breakup with your parents and you worked through these things, setting boundaries, all this, for those who are listening, because it could be, I'm sure there's multiple reasons why people might do this breakup thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about, healing from cultural trauma. It can be other things too. So can you give us maybe a few reasons why the breakup with your parents could be a good idea and kind of how to navigate that for themselves?
Yeah. So breaking up, if you decide and you're in a point where you think you want to break up with your parents, and that will be involved, like I was working with a client and her mom was involved with the kids and things like that, but there were certain events that triggered her all the time. And it could be grief, like let's say something happened traumatic in their childhood, and you need that space to completely grieve or ride out your emotions of a big event.
Yeah.
And if you catch yourself like keeping on revisiting that traumatic event, then that's sign that you should probably break up with your parents for a temporary time to be able to figure that out. Yeah. A lot of it comes with like the awareness that I mentioned earlier is think about when someone irritates you, but think about the deeper reason why. If that's an event or someone says something to you and said it to you a certain way, what did it remind you of? Usually it's like some kind of past moment, because as humans, we tie present day things and associate those with the past. And so those are all your areas of opportunities to work through. So being able to communicate to your parents, hey, I need some time to, figure this or this out. Like you're not going to hear from me from a while or something like that. Out of respect that I'll be able to like work this through, because I just really need some time to work on my healing and being able to communicate that. And sometimes like, yes, that will, your parents might not receive that the best way because they love you, but this like love where it's like, I have to always be around and like, I have to be close to distance to you. And that's how I show love is not the only way to show love. You can love somebody from a distance too.
Yeah. 100%.
You don't always have to be on top of each other or be involved in everything day-to-day, daily things to show each other love. So just communicating, how you feel, what you need, and letting them receive that. And if they say yes or no, it's up to them how they respond to it. Either way, if distance is what you are really needing, then that's what's going to happen, regardless of how they respond it, positively or negatively. It helps to get a third party involved, whether that's like a coach or a therapist, because I'm telling you, it's so difficult to do on your own, especially the first time that you do it, because you have this guilt and the shame come up, and it's hard to sort through all of that because you're like, am I a bad person for doing this? Am I a bad daughter for doing this? Am I a bad mother for doing this? There's a lot that can feel like it's at stake. So it helps to work with somebody. And talk through that so you can figure out exactly what it is that you need. So hopefully that helps.
No, that was perfect. Yes, no, 100%. No, that was great. That was perfect. And I agree too. I mean, I think that third party kind of objective viewpoint is a really because too, I think a lot of times, especially shame, I feel like shame is such a complicated emotion that usually I feel like most of the time shame is kind of like covering up something else. Like there's something deeper than that that's causing the shame. And a lot of times you can't like peel back those layers without someone objectively kind of helping you sort through what that is. So I think that's great advice too, is having a third party to be able to kind of help you walk through that and manage it. And I think you were talking about loving from a distance and not having to be, I always think like the best friends that you have are the friends where you can go, like, if you don't live in the same town as them, you can go for months without talking. And then when you do talk, it's like you never missed a beat, right? I have a friend like that lives, she lives, maybe 5 or 6 hours away. And we don't, and sometimes we'll go years without seeing each other because, we have families or whatever, but we'll text or whatever. And it's like, we never missed a beat. Like so I always think like to me, that's such a sign of like true love and friendship. Mm-hmm. And when you can do that, when you don't have to have this codependent relationship and you don't have to know, why aren't they answering my text or why they answer my call? Like, to be able to just acknowledge like, this is the relationship and I know they love me. I know I love them and I'm solid in that. Like I'm, in my belief in that.
Yeah, that's a great example of that healthy relationship because I think as lovers, sometimes you have your anxious types, you have your avoidant types, and that perfect like in between of just like feeling that security from your friend that y'all don't need to you guys don't need to communicate every day.
Yeah.
But that connection is still there when you need it. Mm-hmm. And and that doesn't revolve you texting them every day, right. You being at their house every day, right. Y'all seeing each other every day. So that's achievable. So yes, healthy relationships is different in everyone's opinion. Like you have to be able to determine what it looks like on your own. Don't reference any TV shows. Please don't.
Yeah. Really.
Reality TV is not a great example.
No,
so for people who are trying to model what they see on TV, it's all drama, is toxic. And that's why
it makes for good TV. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it gets people to keep coming back and watching more. Exactly. So determining, everyone has their own definition of that healthy relationship. So finding references, whether that's people who already exist in your life of that healthy relationship, things that you felt like at ease, like maybe someone had a particular trait that you really liked and you're like, oh yeah, like I really want that in a friend, and just start building lists, qualities, feelings that you want associated in that healthy relationship, and you'll start to develop what that healthy relationship looks like. Because unfortunately, I'm not surrounded by a lot of great examples of relationships. My parents are divorced. They're not the best example. But as I meet people and find, people who are enlightened and spiritually involved or in that kind of personal growth groups, I'm seeing better examples. What that looks like.
Yeah, totally. Love that. So as we start to wrap up, I have one more question that I want to ask you. But before I ask you that, can you let us know where we can find out more about you and kind of follow your journey? You have a podcast yourself, and just learning more about this helping how you help people with their own personal journey and overcoming these types of pain and trauma and helping them with their healing.
Yes. So everyone can follow me on Instagram. It's called Modern Day Asians. I launch episodes every Wednesday, and it's on any podcast format, Apple, Spotify, and it is also called Modern Day Asians. So
perfect.
You can check me out there.
All right. Thanks. Of course, I have links to that in the show notes for y'all. So the last question I want to ask you, Christen, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Ooh, I would work on your relationship with yourself. I think it's like the biggest opportunity for anyone on earth to find your purpose, find self-love for yourself first. That relationship with yourself is connected to everything: money, relationships, career, family. And the more you work on investing in yourself, whether that's education, therapy, retreats, like any of that spiritual stuff, is just going to take you to the next level, and you'll see it affect all the other areas of your life,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get more clarity into your personal purpose.
Yeah.
You'll find that spiritual connection that draws you to, instead of seeking and finding and searching, you will attract it. So
Yeah,
I think that is a great purpose to live by, is to find your purpose that way.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. Your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you have. So yeah, that's it. I love that. Thank you so much, Christen. This was so good. I honestly could talk about this for hours. Like, this is such a good conversation, but thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom and insight around all of this. This is such a powerful topic for people just on their own spiritual growth and their own personal growth. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.